I woke up this day and just didn't feel right. I felt really tired, like a bone tired, like I just couldn't, and nothing would wake, nothing worked to wake me up. I mean, no amount of coffee, nothing. A lot of stress about this day. I was really stressed out about going to Seattle with my parents for the day and being, in their car and having my son and feeling like I couldn't maybe take care of him the way that I would want to, being under their control. And I don't know, I had a lot of anxiety about it. Kind of caught between taking care of everyone's needs that day. And just exhausted. And I said something when they got there about how exhausted I was, but there was no real concern or are you sure you still want to go? No, nothing like that. We had these plans, we were going, and that was that. So we went. And all day long I just felt really bad. And I am not a person who feels bad normally. I'm not a person who gets sick often at all. I don't complain. And so these were the things kind of some things that I had taken for granted were the fact that I had sort of had this belief that because I was a tough person and I never complained and I never I was the opposite of a hypochondriac. I underreacted to things mostly, and that I had this belief that if I ever did say something was wrong with me, that people would pay attention to me, that they would know it was real because I was so stoic. And I was starting to quickly kind of figure out that wasn't true, and this day would be a big eye opener about that. So anyway, the whole day went on. We went through the whole day feeling like really bad, but we made it back. And when I got home, my husband was there with my younger son, and he'd been over at my brother and sister-in-law's house, and he seemed really kind of giddy. Catching him at home was a rarity anymore. He was hardly ever home. There'd been like this rising tension in the family. It seemed like everyone was mad at me all the time. And there would be a reason for this. I would come to figure all this out later. But little did I know that my husband was sort of at the heart of that. He had been, slowly but surely sort of poisoning relationships. Seeing that he could do that in my narcissistic family, my family that was very easily triggered. So he had been slowly but surely doing that. And I didn't understand that. I didn't see. I had lots and lots of denial going on. And my big thing was I absolutely wanted to be loved, wanted to, cared about loving and being loved. And so anything that interfered with my ability to tell myself that these people that I devoted my life to appreciated me and loved me for the way that I loved and took care of them, anything that interfered with my ability to tell myself that was really inaccessible to me. But my body knew better. And what basically happened is, so I got the kids ready for bed, put the kids to bed, and went and grabbed, on the way up I saw the mail, so I grabbed the mail and came into the bedroom where my husband was laying on the bed watching television, and I started to talk to him about things, and all of a sudden I just got this horrible chest pain and I dropped the mail on the floor. It scattered all of my feet, and I said something about chest pain, and my husband didn't budge. He said, sit down, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. So he said that, and sure enough, we had this medical guidebook, which I actually had discovered that we had because about a month and a half earlier, our town had been at the epicenter of the biggest earthquake in like 100 years. And so things come in threes. And so there had been this major earthquake, and one of the biggest thing that happened in our house was that these big, huge floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that were right in the office area where I worked and where my sons played, and I had been told that they were secured to the wall, had fallen face down, and all the contents had scattered everywhere, and that was a real shocker. But fortunately, for whatever reason, we weren't there that day, and it was strange that we weren't there, because this happened like at 11 o'clock in the morning on like a Tuesday morning. So that was just like a month and a half earlier. But anyways, in the picking up of all this stuff and getting those shelves secured like I was told that they had been for years already, I found this medical guidebook. There was like this how to diagnose yourself kind of book, and so I knew it was there. And so I asked my husband, "What would you go get that?" He begrudgingly got off the couch and went down and got it. And he asked me a series of questions. There was like a bunch of flow charts you could follow, and he followed this flow chart and basically diagnosed, well, you're having a major coronary event. Get medical treatment immediately. That's what he said. And then I watched him take off his clothes and get into bed. And the funny thing was that he had been in our bed in weeks. He had slept on the couch for weeks, and so apparently his thinking was, "Oh, good, she's not going to be home tonight, so I'll go in our bed." So he had no intention of taking me to the hospital, nothing. And I didn't think to call my brother, who lived across the street. I didn't think, and you know what? And he knew I wouldn't. That was the strange thing. He knew that he could just go to bed with this diagnosis happening, and that he wasn't going to end up looking bad, because possibly he didn't even know that was bad. Maybe he didn't even know that was bad. But either way, he wasn't compelled by any sort of feeling or any sort of concern for me to get me to the hospital. Here's how out of touch I was, that I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, good idea. You go get some rest, and I'll go over to the guest room and see if it doesn't get better." So I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't call anybody. I didn't call 911, and I didn't get in the car to go to the hospital. I waited. I waited for him to tell me that it was serious. I waited for him to tell me that what was going on was really going on. That's how out of touch I was. That's how much I needed validation. I couldn't even believe that I was having a heart attack on my own, or that something was wrong with my heart, or that this book was right, or anything. I couldn't believe. He didn't say, "Come on, we got to get to the hospital," and so it wasn't. We didn't have to go to the hospital because he didn't say so. And so I went and did exactly that. I went across the hallway, laid down. The pain just got worse. It got so bad. It was just incredibly bad pain. Went down my arm, and it just felt like my arm was broken. It was just really bad. And so I told myself, I did all these tricks on myself. I told myself, oh, because recently he'd been telling me, "Oh, you can't expect me to read your mind." So I tell myself, "Oh, you didn't ever say to him, 'I need to go to the hospital. It's really bad. He can't read your mind.'" And so I tell myself that's the reason that he didn't say anything. So it's like a new lease on life. I go, okay, now I just need to go over and tell him that it's really bad. I need to go to the hospital. By now, hours are wasting. This all happened like maybe 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. And now it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I tiptoe back into the room. I want to be really, I want to wake him up gently. And so I kind of walk through the room in the dark until I can feel the edge of the bed on my kneecaps. And I'm like, honey, I think it's really bad. It's not getting any better. I think I better go to the hospital. And he goes, "Well, what are you waking me up for? You have a car, don't you? You're a grown woman. Jesus, And I thought, of course, he's so right. How stupid was I? So I go, yeah, okay, yeah. All right, sorry to bother you. Anyways, so I go downstairs. I kiss my sons goodbye, partly thinking that I might not see them again. And I drive myself not to the closest hospital. I go across town because my mother works at the closest hospital, and I don't want to embarrass her. I don't want to make her look bad. I don't want to make her have to make appearances that she cares or anything. Instead, I'll go across town to the other hospital so that she can just tell people what she wants to tell people, come if she wants to come, and it won't be impacting her job or her. I won't force her hand. I won't force her to have to put up appearances or anything. You know, act like she cares about me or act distraught, or this way she can be free to do whatever she wants to do, and I won't be forcing her to do anything. And so I go across town, and also because I had also worked at the hospital where she worked, the one that was closest, and this way I would just be more anonymous, So anyway, so I went across town to the other hospital, and I go in there, and now I used to work in an ER, and I was told if anyone ever comes in with chest pain, you drop everything and you get them triaged. So I walk in there, and I'm seeing, it's the middle of the night now, it's like 3 a.m, and I'm seeing all these people in there, and I'm so embarrassed because I'm thinking if I'm going to go in there, I'm going to have chest pain. I'm going to end up cutting in line in front of all these people. And I just am so embarrassed, and I feel so bad about that. And so, but it turns out that was a false, needless fear, because I tell them that I have chest pain when they ask me, and they go, okay, take a seat. So I just take a seat. And anyway, what basically ends up happening is hours and hours and hours pass. Even after I get to the ER, hours pass. No one's, it takes hours till I even see a doctor. Everyone is acting like, and finally the doctor's like, can I help you? Like, you poor little thing. He didn't even, when the doctor finally came in to see me, he didn't have any idea even why I was there. And, it was like it was just, I mean, it's really truly a miracle that I didn't just die sitting right there. There's so many, hours are just passing. And, all these different EKGs and things have basically come back apparently normal. What I find out is normal is like within a normal range, I find out later. But basically, the doctor finally comes in and he's like, what can I help you? How can I help you? Like, you poor little thing, did you just need some attention? And I go, well, apparently you can't. I'm really concerned now because my husband leaves for work like at, early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning, and it's getting close. And I think he's going to be so upset if he has to be hassled with the kids and he can't just go to work. Now, we own our own business. He's the boss at our business. It's not like he's going to lose his job or anything, but I'm still just completely concerned about this. And so I'm getting dressed. By the time the doctor comes in, I'm getting dressed. And he's like, can I help you? And I'm like, apparently you can't help me. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do about this chest pain. And it's going down my arm, and it hurts really bad. But apparently my EKG is fine and everything is fine. So I got to get home because my husband has to leave for work. And the doctor's like, well, okay, let me just get some quick blood tests. And, okay, so, that he heard the sounds of that and he got a little bit nervous. So he comes back in. This time he came back really fast. He's white as a sheet. And he says, he's white as his lab coat. And he says, I don't know how to tell you this, but you've clearly had some kind of a massive, major heart attack of some kind. And so call the cardiologist. And he's on his way right over, and you've had a major heart attack. And so I call my husband. I tell him I've had a heart attack. He says, "No shit," he says. And so anyhow, I go and I have this heart surgery, and it goes fine, and it goes fine, and I'm really concerned about my kids. I'm like, I can't die. I said, I can't die. I've got 2 little boys that need me, and all this stuff, and but a part of me knows when, as soon as the doctor says you've had a heart attack, part of me knows that I did, and part of me absolutely believes that I willed it to happen. Absolutely believes I willed it to happen, because I had been so depressed, and I didn't know why. I had no idea why I was so depressed, because on the surface my life looked exactly like I wanted it to look. It looked exactly like it had in my mind's eye 10 years earlier. But somewhere in my, somewhere I understood that there was something unreal about it, that it could all disappear in a moment's notice, and it would all disappear if I had too many needs, and that it only existed the way that it did because I was doing all this stuff for everyone, and I didn't require them. I denied my own needs, and allowed myself to be pretty neglected, very much neglected, in fact. So, but I was depressed, and I didn't understand my depression, and of course I felt really guilty about my depression, and I thought, well, it has to be biochemical, because and my life is perfect, so it has to be something wrong with my brain. So I was taking all these antidepressants, and nothing was working, and this is what I was in. So at first, when I heard this about the heart attack, my first thought was, thank God I don't have to keep going. I don't have to keep doing this, and I didn't have to kill myself. I mean, this is something no one can blame me for. Well, I was wrong about that, for one thing. If people want to blame you, can blame you. They will find a way to blame you regardless. But that was my first thought. And then my next thought was, wait a minute, I can't die. And this was the first thing that I said out loud, was, I can't die, my sons need me. And so came through that surgery. And before I went into the surgery, my husband had shown up with my parents. I don't know how all that worked, but they all ended up arriving there at the same time. So I saw them before I went into surgery, and then when I came out of surgery, just only my husband was there. And the doctor came in and told us what had happened. He said that it was a spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which is a rare kind of, it's not actually a heart attack. It's not the same thing as a heart attack. It's, the net result is the same, because it stops the circulation to the heart, and the heart starts to die. And the way that they could tell by the blood test was that the heart muscle lets off enzymes that shows it's being damaged, and that's how they knew that I had something going on. But instead of it being a clot or a blockage, it's that the LAD tore apart like a broken hose, and it's very, very rare. It's a very rare condition. But when it happens, the person that it happens to is a woman in childbearing years. It's linked to as fluctuating estrogen levels, and linked to being like a recent childbirth. It's actually the leading cause of maternal death during childbirth, which is, of course, very rare nowadays, but it is, in modern days, when it happens, this is the leading cause of it. But usually it's diagnosed post-mortem, because the first sign is this massive heart attack. And so usually people die, so it was really a miracle that I was alive. And so the doctor explained all this to my husband and I. And basically said I didn't do anything wrong. It was just sort of a fluky thing that, the best thing I could do is just reduce my stress, and he had no idea, what the dynamics were between my husband and I, and so he thought we were just a normal family. And so that was that. And no one else would ever hear this explanation. My husband said, well, I guess you ought to change a few things. So clearly he was planning to blame me. I don't know what he was suggesting, but he wasn't saying we need to change a few things, or, I'll be around more, or I want to reduce your stress, or God, this was so scary, I'm so glad you're alive. None of that was happening. None of that was happening at all. And it was clear to me that my husband was not that thrilled that I was alive and that he was blaming me. And I kind of thought, darn it, it was my one big chance, and I blew it by living. I really did. I thought that. And so the one thing that I had, I had this catheter in, this catheter that they do the surgery through. It's it goes into your femoral artery, which is the great big artery in your upper thigh. They do the surgery through that, and that was still in. And so I had to stay very, very still for 12 hours while they were waiting for my blood thinner to wear off, so that my blood would coagulate when they took it out and I didn't bleed to death. So I had some sedation, and I just had to stay very, very still for the next 12 hours, and then they were going to remove this catheter, and then I would be good to go, and I'd be going home. So this removal of the catheter was explained to me just almost like a just no-brainer. It was, they treated it, they said, and they made it sound very much like it was like removing a cast or removing stitches, or something very, very minor. Okay, so the next thing that happens is that they show up to remove this catheter, and my husband's there, and they don't even ask him to leave. That's no big deal. So he's down at the foot of the bed, and he says to my husband, "Will you just kind of move up around?" So he goes up to like the head of the bed, and so he's just talking. The nurse is just talking, make a small chit chat, and about what they're going to do for Easter and this and that and the other thing. And I see that he's got, he kind of lifts back the blanket, and I can see that his, arms are giant. He's got these great big forearms that are like as big as my thighs. He's just a really big man. And so he's kind of starting to fiddle around with the catheter that's, got to be removed. So I kind of look away, 'cause I'm a little bit squeamish. I don't want to like look at anything. I look over at the women nurses that are standing there kind of watching, and she was kind of checking a few things, and then just kind of waiting and watching. And I see their faces kind of change, and then I hear the male nurse say, "It's a bleed." And then he says to my husband, "Hold her down." So my husband pins me down at my shoulders to the table, and I look down, and I see that there is just a geyser of blood coming out of my femoral artery. And it's more blood than I've ever seen, ever. And I look up at my husband, and I can tell he thinks I'm going to die. And I hear something about that I've had too much blood thinner, that the bed won't raise, that I don't know, just some different things like that. And he's pushing on my body. I hear things cracking and snapping in my body, and the pain is excruciating as this big, huge guy is pressing down on me, trying to stop this bleeding. And I'm like, why are they doing this to me? Next thing I know, I'm up above, looking down on the whole thing. I see them escorting my husband to the door, and I see out on the other side of the door, I can see I can look down on the hospital as though there's no roof on it. So I can see the hall, I can see my room, I can see the wall, the door, and then I can see outside the door that my parents and my grandparents and my father-in-law are there. And so and that they're escorting my husband out the door to be with them, and then I see that there is a resuscitation team, like the people with the crash cart, coming in, and then that's all I see. Next thing I know, I am basically whisked away. The tenor of everything completely changes. There is no pain. Everything is perfect. I feel utterly calm. I have no knowledge of the life I'm leaving, of who I was, who I was in my body, in my life, that I have children, any of that. I have no knowledge of any of that, but I have absolute knowledge that I'm exactly where I belong, that I am coming home finally, that I'm about to be with my family, the family that's, waiting for me with open arms, that, and I instantly understand everything, like every unanswerable question about the universe that I've ever had. All of a sudden, I suddenly know it all. I know everything. Everything makes perfect sense. I have the experience of I'm going down a long white corridor, like it is a white light. There's this white corridor, it's kind of pinkish white, and above that, there's this like dark blue black sky with sort of angelic sort of beings up there, and there's this harmonious music. It's music, but it's the most perfect music. It's like everything is perfect, and you can experience everything with all of your senses. It's like the air was soft, the music was delicious, the colors sounded glorious. You know what I mean? It was like everything was, I could experience everything with every sense, and it was amazing. And then I felt like I had no experience of being greeted by anyone that I knew. Of course, at this point, I didn't know hardly anyone that had died. And my family members, my grandparents were all still living. So I didn't really have any family members that had died that I knew. But I sensed that the people that I was going to meet were definitely my family, and they weren't family that I knew in my earthly life. It was my sense. But I belonged there, and they missed me, and they were so happy that I was coming. They were anticipating that I was coming, and I didn't see myself. I couldn't see myself. I had no real sense of who I was in terms of my name and identity in my life on Earth, and I was one thing that's different about what I've heard from any other NDE experience was that the person or being or whatever that greeted me was really giant, like the size of a mountain, and carrying me. And it was this fatherly sort of energy, definitely fatherly in my that was the way that it was to me. And he was carrying me and informing me of things. We were like having a conversation, but we weren't talking. It was just we were communicating. And so this fatherly being who was so big and I was so small that I couldn't really make out a face or anything. I couldn't, it was like, but he was communicating to me that we were going down this like long white kind of corridor, and where there were like things, pictures of my life, sort of, it seemed like, and it was sort of informing me about my life in a way, because this was like news to me because I didn't remember the life. And so we're on our way to meet this family that's waiting for me, and all this glorious music and glorious sounds and everything all around. And he was telling me, informing me about my life and that I had lived a good life and been loving. And the what I knew for sure, the biggest thing I knew for sure was just that love was everything. Love was absolutely everything. Anyway, but he was informing me about my life. And then we got to where I saw my kids, where he showed me my kids. And then the tone kind of changed. And he said that when the message that I got was, it's not that it's not your time, but that I get a choice. I have a choice to make, because I didn't have to go back. It wasn't really my time, but I didn't have to go back because I'd been through a lot, and because what I was going to face when I went back was going to be very, very difficult. And so he wanted me to choose it. And I said, no, I'm not going back. And I understood that if I chose not to go back, that the purpose, the reason that I came to this life, I would have to redo. I would have to do it again. And I said, I don't care. I don't care. It's too great here. I don't want to go back. No, I want to stay. Then I got to see my kids and what would happen to them if I stayed. And I saw that they would grow up without unconditional love, that they would grow up surrounded, they would grow up with the family that we had surrounding us that didn't love us, and that they would be orphans and no one would know it. And that their life was, that their world would not sustain the death of their mother. Their inner selves, their souls, their compassionate spirits, that would have to go away to survive the life that they would have to live without me. And I immediately just said, I gotta get back. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. I gotta get back. And so it chokes me up. So I felt myself fighting to get back into my body, to get back to my kids. And then I felt immediately it was like I got sucked out of that place and started coming back into consciousness, and I was very disoriented, and I was in a lot of pain, and there was this blinding, everything, the lights were so harsh, and the pain was so harsh, and the sounds were so harsh, and I opened my eyes, and the nurses were there, and I started to see that they had been through a horrible ordeal. There was blood everywhere. And the nurse is saying to me, the older woman nurse is saying to me, let's get you out of these things. Let's get you out of these clothes, get you cleaned up. She's saying that to me, and they lift me up and put me on another bed, and they're stripping my clothes off, and they're all working really fast, and they're going around, they're cleaning everything up, they're wiping me down, they're changing the sheets, they're throwing all these blood-soaked linens into a hamper. They put me back on the bed, they prop me up, they pull up the blanket, they get me all kind of put together, and then they're sweating. They just look like they've been through. They're red-faced and flushed, and they look like they've seen ghosts, and they've been really, really scared. And the male nurse says to me, "You gave us quite a scare," and I'm not quite sure what happened. I'm still really, I go, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing. And then they say, well, we got to go let your family, and they've been out there this whole time, as though I'd been around the whole time, like I knew what that would mean. I had, like they were trying to tell me, your family's been out there hearing this whole thing, and they're totally traumatized, and they're, but I have no idea what they've been through, I have no idea what happened. And so then they go and they give my family the thumbs up to come in. And the first ones to enter the room are my grandparents. And my grandmother's crying, and my grandfather's crying. And my grandmother says to me, "Oh my God, they called code blue twice, and they came rushing in here, and we had no idea. We thought we were going to lose you." This is what she says. And she leans out and kisses me, and my grandfather kisses me, and then they just kind of go stand to the side. Then my father-in-law comes in. He looks white as a sheet, and he says, he just nods his head, and he said, oh, he can't even utter words. He's crying too, and he kisses me, and he goes and sits on the window ledge. Then my husband and my parents come in. They meander in slowly. They're not even looking at me. They're not talking to me. They're not showing me any kind of emotions. They're talking to each other. They don't say anything to me. And they stand at the foot of the bed, sort of in a huddle, talking about, I don't know what they're talking about, but they're not saying anything to me. And it's very surreal, very strange. It seems strange to me, but again, I don't know what's happened. And so I'm just trying to kind of get my bearings. And I remember saying, where are the kids? And my husband says, they're at my mother's house. And I said, oh, and I just really wanted to see them so badly. And then I said something about, I think I went to the other side or something like that. And my mother turns around. She's got her back faced to me at the foot of my bed. She turns around. She says to me over her shoulder, you were medicated or under sedation or something like that. And turns back around. And I didn't try and talk about it again after that. And I immediately knew that I had to put it all down and try and get back to my kids and focus on that. And I was very closed to the whole experience. And I had been told that I was going to forget a lot of what I saw, that I wasn't going to be able to remember a lot of what I saw, but that things would come back to me slowly. And soon after this happened, my husband left me with my parents' support. I mean, he was lying about me, he was making up whole stories about how, that this had something to do with drugs and all this stuff, which I realized later, and he'd been sort of sabotaging relationships. And so what ensues in my life is just a nightmare that goes on for several years, for about 4 years, and the total dismantling of my life, where I end up surviving and then losing everything that defined that life, losing every single thing that defined that life. And it was only after that happened that I had lost everything, and I was at the very lowest low, that I started to remember what had happened. And I started to remember that one of the things that I was told was that you already have everything that you need. You have everything that you need. I understood that what I had was, I had this love I had for my sons, this love that I had from this infinite universe, this God, however, I could still, I had a hard time with things that were too large, so I still had to keep God sort of like, it's something I could understand, and so God sort of seemed like still this sort of heavenly Father was a thing that I could deal with, because also that was really the only parent that I had to count on. And so that was a comfortable image for me. There was so many things that went on in the next few years where I thought I was crazy anyway, and everyone was telling me I was crazy. So, I didn't know how much of anything to believe. And so I don't know why it had to happen the way that it did, but my life went into absolute chaos. And I've heard some other stories where people have talked about their NDE stories where this happens. But it really did. My life went into absolute chaos after I survived this NDE. But then at my lowest low, like I said, it started coming back to me. This wisdom started coming back to me. I started remembering things that I saw and that I was told. And over the last 10 years or so, it's just come back to me piece by piece, bit by bit, as have memories of my childhood, which were also repressed and forgotten. And so I have a pretty cohesive memory now of everything. even Alexander in his book Proof of Heaven talks about how the knowledge that he got when he went over, when he went into in his near-death experience was like, he said it was equivalent, and this just really rung true for me. He said it was equivalent to if a chimpanzee got to be a human for a day and then had to go back to be a chimpanzee. He said that the knowledge that you get when you go over is like that, and then you go back to being human, and that is exactly what it feels like. So it would be impossible, and the reason that we don't know it all the way that we understand it immediately, we understand immediately what it would take me the rest of my life of hard, devoted, dedicated study to even scratch the surface of. And the reason for that, my understanding for the reason for that is that it was just because this life, the reason that we manifested into a human life and the body and all that is for experiences. Basically what it is that if we understood it, the vastness of the universe when we were in our human life, it would probably stagnate us so that we wouldn't see the point in acting, and so we wouldn't get the experience out of the life that we're supposed to. So and that wasn't the reason that the whole experience, the whole chance that we have of materializing into a human form, that opportunity exists so that we can do things that we wouldn't want to ruin by the knowledge of too much. And so that's also why I can't remember it all, is because there is definitely a veil in place. This life experience in this body is just a small part of our whole experience. So so this is like, say our soul is a 20-chapter book. This life is a chapter. That seems like a pretty good way to put it. And so my comforting thoughts about my son come from the fact that I know that it's a chapter. I know that this life is really short, and I'm going to see him pretty soon. And I mean, even if I live to be 95, I'm going to see him pretty soon. So there's that. I know that he died because he wasn't meant to be here to suffer, and he was suffering. And I wish that he could have found a way to not suffer and not have die. But that's for me. I miss him, and his brother misses him. And I would have loved to see all the wonderful things that he could have done here. As I look at my son's music, I am realizing that he knew he was going to die. And he was trying to tell me, trying to prepare me. And he was okay with it. He was okay with it. It was this life that he was having a hard time with. And he was letting me know that it wasn't my fault. He was letting me know that I did a great job. There's a lot in common with my story with other stories. And I had not ever read near-death experiences, ever. And I didn't get into reading them or anything even after this happened to me. I still really haven't hardly read any of them. I haven't been big into anything to do with a community of people that have had a near-death experience or anything like that. And only now that this has happened with my son has it really started to become more of an interest. The wisdom that comes from it now is benefiting me a great deal. The main thing I know is that one thing I know for sure is that love is what matters. Love is what matters. And that's really what you need to tap into. You need to question. You need to ask yourself. That will inform your choices. Is what's the loving thing to do. And if you operate that way, you can't go wrong. No matter how much all this is confusing and all that, it doesn't really matter. If you go with that one simple question, that will inform your choices, and you can't go wrong that way. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.